This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland one of the lane, locked him. Mobley, pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Game 1 showed us why the Boston Celtics are the prohibitive favorite to win the NBA championship. Cavs got out to a pretty good start in the first quarter, but Boston's three-point shooting ended up being the largest difference maker on a night of strong performances from them. Joining me today to break down Game 1 is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I thought, you know, if you were a skeptic in this series, it was I think about as predictable of an outcome as you might have seen. You know, I think Boston shot the cover off the ball. They used their great ISO players to get two on the ball, and the Cavs couldn't close out well, and they got up 46 threes and hit a trillion of them.
Yep. Honestly, this game, it kind of reminded me a little bit of those, you know, going back to when we did our City of Champions rewatch of the 2016 Warriors. This game kind of felt a little similar, where I liked the Cavs' initial plan of attack. I thought they played with great tempo. I thought they played with great pace. You know, Boston gets out to that 10-2 early lead, and then Cleveland kind of roars back and gets their scoring. I think you saw kind of within that run that, you know, all D ratings aren't necessarily built the same. Boston is without a doubt a great defense. They have great individual defenders. They play great defense as a collective. But I think the level of physicality that they bring and how much they prohibit you from moving around the court is different than when you're playing against the Orlando Magic. I thought the Cavs were actually able to have better freedom of movement and generated better looks. Not better looks than the Celtics, but better looks than they did against Orlando.
Which, isn't that the problem in the end?
To be very clear, because I think that was an important thing to make that distinction. But I thought, you know, the shot making just kind of wasn't consistently there for Cleveland. You know, there were stretches where they had difficulties generating quality looks, but I thought that they did overall a decent job of getting back and generating those looks eventually. It's just when you have those type of droughts against the Celtics and they find their rhythm offensively, you're in for a long night.
Yeah, I mean, this team's awesome. I think,
unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're really, really good, and they do a great job of just firing. You know, the tracking data isn't out for this game, but you know, I just think there's such a difference between you know, getting set, getting ready, and trying to get a shot off before the closeout gets there, and shooting as though no one was there in the first place. Right. And like, that's what Boston does so well. Man, was Derek White unbelievable in this game, both from 3 and from 2. I mean, he only had 2 2-pointers made, but both were absolute backbreakers and bullies at the rim.
If I can derail us for a second here,
sure.
I can't believe that Derek White, coming from the San Antonio Spurs, you know, one of the best player development
couldn't hit the broadside of a barn when he was there.
Could not hit threes, even though he was with one of the best player development organizations that has existed in NBA history, and then comes to Boston and then turns into a sniper. Like, it's unbelievable, but he's a hell of a player, right? Like, I think you saw tonight why people make the argument that he is their second best player, you know, behind Jason Tatum. But you also saw tonight, hey, Jaylen Brown is capable of being pretty dominant himself. You know, they have an embarrassment of riches. I believe they were 23-4 this season without Kristaps Porzingis, or something close to that. So, you know, this is a team that has a lot of depth. They have a lot of talent. You know, it's weird from our perspective, I think. I don't know if you share this sentiment, but it's weird going into a series again where the Cavs aren't the favorite. Because I think in our podcast history, that's only happened twice prior to this series, which was the 2017 finals and the 2018 finals. You know,
weren't the Hawks favored in that first series, in the 60-win Hawk team? They might have been favored.
Yeah, but we weren't doing the podcast then.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right,
yeah. So, it is different. And, obviously the Knicks and Magic Cavs were more slight favorites. The 4-5 is always a little bit of a toss up, but this is the first time that we're back kind of in the seat of, if both teams are playing at their best, Boston's likely going to come out on top. This is a team that we are trying to get to their level, but your hope in a series like this, just like the hope against when you're playing the Warriors, is that you stay close enough, you stay attached, you keep your grip on the rope, you survive the runs and are able to capitalize and are able to steal a game or two. And, we've seen in this, we saw in those series, we saw in the series against Orlando, like, you can get blown out on the road. It happens. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to occur for every single game. And I thought for 2.5 quarters, I was pretty okay with the Cavs process and how they were playing. Once it got out of hand, it just got out of hand and the game was over. But, even until that Peyton Pritchard 3 went down, I thought the Cavs did a pretty good job of staying connected at least.
Yeah, I mean, you have a couple, for the most part, I thought they did play a pretty fundamental defensive game. Boston hit a lot of that third quarter really did feel like a knife, because they go out and play great defense on like 4 straight possessions, and Derek White hits 4 straight threes. That's really tough. And
I thought we got lucky sometimes in the first half with the shots they missed, and then in the third, we were defending much better from the perimeter, and they were hitting those shots.
Yeah, it's I think why we always kind of talk about caring more about process than results, because results can be fluky like that. Where Boston saving grace offensively in the first half, in their 59-point half, was the fact that they got 11 free throws in the first quarter. They only get 2 the rest of the game, but then they just start bombing away from 3. So I'm sorry, they got 3 the rest of the game. But so I think, to me, it's a couple things, and some of this stuff is just going to be hard, because I'm not sure we're like leaving this game. It's one of the first games where I just kind of really felt for the coaching staff, because a lot of the problems that I thought they faced in this games were structural problems that were hard for them to overcome. This is a small Cavaliers team right now.
Mm-hmm.
And not only we've talked plenty about that small backcourt and kind of the problems they pose at the highest level against great offensive players, but they're small everywhere right now. Mobley is the only big who's getting real minutes. Marcus Morris was okay in his 9 minutes. I guess you might need to try him a little more, but like, the problem is that Boston at their worst is when you can not put 2 on the ball, aka hold up in isolation and at the rim, and not even have to take 2 steps away from your man. And there were possessions where that happened, and sometimes Boston's going to score anyway, because Tatum and Brown are awesome at that. But when the Cavs are this small, you have, not only are you having to send help because Tatum is trying to burrow to the rim, or even like Derek White or Drew Holiday are able to burrow to the rim. Not only do you have to send help, you're also rotating out and closing out with smaller players who have less length to bother these catch and shoots from the Derek Whites, the Al Horfords of the world. And like, I just feel like I don't know what the right solution is defensively with the personnel that's available to them. I just think they miss Dean and Jarrett so much in this series. And part of the reason why I was pretty nervous about the series is those guys just allow you to stay in a shell defensively a lot better, or switch more, because that's the other thing you can't switch. When Luke Cornett's setting a screen 27 feet from the basket, you can't switch. And I
thought there was a little too much soft switching. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. Because you fight and you fight, then you end up putting 2 on the ball, and then they get you in rotation, then they bomb away from 3 anyway. So, but when you do switch, you've got either, Cornet just killing you on the boards, which I joked that they were going to have to win the Luke Cornet minutes. He was plus 12 and had 6 offensive boards in just 20 minutes because he's 7'2", and the Cavs had a bunch of 6'4", 6'5" guys on him every time Evan got pulled away from the hoop on those switches. So you can't switch. You can't put 2 on the ball. You can't stay home. And like, I guess you just have to hope. You have to just execute better and hope they're a little colder,
Yeah.
I mean, they missed 2 or 3 more threes, and all of a sudden you've had an okay defensive game.
Yeah. It really can be that simple. And, obviously being down Jared, being down Dean Wade, you're talking about 2 out of your 4 best players, right? On the defensive end of the floor. And 2 of your longest players, right? To your size point. Like, going back to that last game that the Cavs played against the Celtics, Dean Wade was really helpful, but Dean Wade was very helpful as, a help defender. Like, he didn't get the Tatum assignment a whole lot in that game, right? Like, Jarrett guarded him a lot, right? And when Jarrett is defending him and Jarrett's throwing length at him, or Dean's throwing length at him, or Mobley's throwing length at him, it's helpful when you kind of have those backline guys, whether that be Dean Wade in rotation, whether that be, the other of Mobley and Allen that's able to impact passing lanes and make guys second guess when they're attacking the basket. Because when guys got past kind of that initial defense tonight, like, they were able to burrow their way all the way to the rim. And, I think you see some of the limitations of Mobley as a full-time 5 in this matchup defensively. Like, I thought overall he did a good job, but I
think it's more a limitation of the rest of the roster than Mobley.
I was going to say, I'm going to backtrack my take right away there, because I think the limitations of our defensive scheme and what we're able to do defensively, if Evan Mobley isn't kind of the free safety roaming for. Because I think when we are able to play elite defense against teams this proficient on the offensive end, that's usually a big part of the equation. And I think when you only have one of those guys, when you only have one 7-footer that's able to defend all 3 levels of the floor and defend multiple positions and whatnot, it just makes things harder, and you feel that deficit in size more than you do in other matchups.
Yeah. So I just think Boston has a lot of levers to pull, and I'm just not, if I'm coaching this team, I'm just not quite sure what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know what my ace in the hole is. Putting 2 on the ball just seems like certain death.
You have to play them straight up. Like, I think you have to live with it. In some games,
but straight up means, you look at Jaylen Brown yammed on Isaac Okoro because they have you can't help. Yeah. So we talked about how Boston was a team that never ever gets to the rim, and part of the reason is everyone kind of agrees that man, they're spaced. I guess we got to help when the guy gets there, and then they spray it out. It's just so that's on the defensive end. I'm just not sure. Normally I have at least some stuff I can point to, and there were certainly mistakes. Don't get me wrong. I forget which play it was, but I think it was another Derek White play where there was kind of a high pick and roll in semi-transition, and Donovan thought a switch was happening, and the big didn't think a switch was happening, and White just walks into a 3, and you can cut that stuff out. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they played a perfect game on that side of the floor by any means. There are certain things they can just do better, but I think I felt very different in this game compared to the Magic series when they lost by 20, when it's hey, just play better and you'll win. I don't know if that's necessarily. I don't think you can just push the do better button in this series. You're gonna need a little help. You're gonna need a little luck with the personnel you have. You hope Wade and Allen can find a way to make an appearance in this series. But then you go to the other side of the coin, which is just the other thing that I kind of feel for the staff on, which is the team just can't shoot right now. Mm-hmm. They can't shoot. You look at. They get up 42 threes of their own. We would have dreamed of them getting up 42 threes against Orlando. And I guess you could say Boston's were better looks, but I thought we had a lot of great looks, and we go 11 of 42. And I'm sorry, I just want to get through this last point, which is that in the first round, both Boston and Cleveland had a really hard time getting wide open threes. Cavs were dead last in wide open 3 attempts per game. Boston was third to last. Why does it feel different? Boston shoots 44% on their open threes. The Cavs shoot 31% on their wide open threes. And I bet that number went down for the playoffs tonight. And like, you're just not going to win against great teams shooting 28% from 3. And I don't know why it's fallen off as precipitous of a cliff as it has in the postseason. This was a pretty good 3-point shooting team, or at least an average 3-point shooting team that is, you know, a very, very bad one right now.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you're just not going to win. You're just not going to beat this Celtics team unless you make shots, because they're going to make theirs.
I've got a few theories when it comes to that. You know, obviously one, you know, Boston being off since Wednesday is helpful, and guys are coming off a game 7. That's a factor. And obviously we know that not everybody's particularly healthy, but you know, when you talk about season averages versus analyzing individual matchups, you know, sometimes things can get buried in the season averages. And I think when you play a team like Orlando and you play a team like Boston, who has such great individual defenders at the point of attack, I think you feel just how hard the Cavs have to work even to get their open looks. Like, the open looks might come later in the shot clock, but it's a lot of work from Donovan Mitchell. It's a lot of work from Darius Garland. And I just don't think that the defense is collapsing and, you know, in rotation to the kind of extent that generates like the easy catch and shoot looks for a guy like Max Strus. Like, he might, the end result might be an open shot when he's coming off a pin down or something like that, but he's working his butt off to get there, right? And he's battling it, and they're just not, they just don't have a kind of a multitude of playmakers and play creators. Because when you look at the Celtics roster, and I thought Kenny Smith did a good job of, you know, highlighting this, Boston has guys that can create for themselves and others at almost every position, right? Like, you can run, you know, Jason Tatum as a screener, Peyton Pritchard's initiating the possession, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford. We know that he's an offensive hub, right? Like, you have that at every single position. And I think it just allows you to run a more versatile and a more diverse offense that facilitates easier looks in general. Whereas with the Cavs, like, one thing that's been kind of consistent that we've seen these last 2 years is we know Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are good playmakers. The assist totals just aren't there. Like, they aren't there in the postseason the way that they are in the regular season. And I think some of that is just how hard they've had to work in these playoff matchups that they've had to generate looks, not only for themselves, but for others as well.
Yep. And I don't know if that's a health of the offense thing. I don't know if it's a
some of it's personnel for sure. Like, I know it. Some of it's definitely personnel, right? Because like, we need more from guys like Evan Mobley. We need you know, Karis LeVert to be that wing playmaker, because if he's not that, we
need Sam Merrill to hit the 3 or 4 open threes he got today. You know, he can't go over 4. And like, again, maybe it's a rhythm thing, maybe it's a pressure thing, maybe it's a guard setup thing, but like, the 3-point shooting has just been abysmal. And I think they would tell you that. And it's just, against Orlando, again, you could just grind them out. And that's what I wanted them to do, by the way. I remember this. I was like, let's just lean in on mucking it up. And we bet we can out ugly you. And they did. They were tough they as nails, and they mucked it up and beat up Orlando at the game Orlando was trying to play. You're just not going to be able to do that against this Boston series. It's more about like the bait and switch of it, of like trying to trick them into stupid shots. I just think the personnel there is a challenge. And then, you know, obviously you're gonna have to find ways to attack on the other side of the ball, whether it's from 3 or not. You have to find ways to attack the the few weak links Boston has, you have to go make Al Horford guard in big space. At
you gotta stop challenging Luke Cornett, because if you go back to that last game that Cleveland won, the Dean Wade game, I think we were shooting in the first half like 20% inside the arc and shooting well from three in that game, just because we kept trying to challenge Luke Cornett at the rim, and it does not go well. Like the Cavs,
you got to get him out into space. I mean, Luke Cornett played. This is not a great defender. This is actually a bad defender. You just got to get him moving. And you got to get him going side to side. And here's the thing. I'm trying to figure out whether I'm encouraged by the Cavs looks they generated or discouraged, because I thought that they got way better looks than they got against Orlando.
Yeah.
All game.
Freedom of movement was night and day.
Some oppressively deep drop from Boston's bigs. Cornett and Horford were hanging out at the free throw line on some of these high pick and rolls. But it's just, and some of that is just them betting on the fact that White and Holiday are going to stay connected enough to make it hard for the guards to go up. But we're going to have to find a way to kill that drop. And I don't know if it's pull up 3-point shooting, because that doesn't feel like the remedy right now. But if it's not,
I think it has to be.
I think that just might have to be, unless you can figure out some way to, I don't know, do the Gortat screens to get some deep seals from your bigs on those rolls to generate some clean looks. I thought Donovan was really able to get a lot of good rim looks. He also had some outrageous finishes too. Yeah. But I just think at that they do probably just need to play the shoot better game, which it's feels far away right now. I won't lie.
Honestly, I think if you do anything but that, you're basically driving into the set defense, right? Like you're basically playing into what the drop wants from you, right? Like you can't all of a sudden go away from what the defense is giving you in order to generate a tougher look because you feel better about that, right? Like that. Those help defenders are going to be there. They're always going to be, in position. Just they're chock full of reliable guys that are just as reliable defensively as Zoom is for us. Support for this podcast and the following message comes for Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. I do think that you're going to have to take those pull-up threes. I actually thought from an assertiveness standpoint, I liked what Garland was doing tonight. I thought he was taking, the right threes, getting up 8, 2 of 8, 5 assists. Probably should have at least had a 6th if Marcus Morris didn't miss that layup. But, no turnovers against a team that generates a ton of turnovers.
Cavs only had 5 turnovers tonight.
They did a really good job taking care of the ball, and I think, again, that kind of goes to, oh, wow, we actually have a little bit of space to move. Jalen Suggs isn't putting an elbow into my throat every time I'm trying to bring the ball up the court, right? Like, you might get an elbow to the face if you're Darius, but, it was a different kind of feel, and I think from his standpoint, it's simply just shoot better. Like, I thought process-wise, maybe a few more times where he could have been on ball. Some of those bench lineups are asking a lot from him from a creation standpoint. And, he doesn't have that gear right now that Donovan has of, just hitting incredibly tough shots. You doing all right over there?
Yeah. We're going to have to wrap up the pod. There's a tornado warning.
Okay.
So I got to go get my children to the basement.
Okay. Well,
so I'm gonna let you wrap us up.
I'll wrap this thing up here. Sorry, guys, that this is a little bit weird, but safety first. We will have more thoughts. We'll extend some of it to our Game 2 coverage. Thanks for everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there, especially you, Carter. Until next time, go Cavs.